Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing the second part of this surf green or seafoam green Stratocaster. It's an unbranded guitar that I bought for really cheap and we're hoping to mod it, relic it and hopefully make it play like a dream. So let's continue with our deep dive into the processes this guitar is going to need to get it there. Now I've been really excited for a few weeks waiting for all the parts to arrive and I think I've settled on how we're going to modify this guitar. I've decided to swap all the hardware for gold hardware. And I've also decided to switch the pickguard for something a bit more in keeping with the vintage tone of this guitar. It's going to be kind of a dirty aged Relic white. Not cream, I find that a bit too orangey and warm. I'm looking for something that's just slightly off white that's got a real vintage character to it. Same thing with the pickups. As we heard in episode 1, these pickups sound really good. They're ceramic back pickups, which I have no problem with at all. You can find comments all over the internet saying that ceramic pickups are a bit harsh and shrill, but actually the truth is, it's the opposite way around. Alnico pickups tend to be a bit thinner, a bit crispier, so there's a good chance we might stick with these pickups, but I've got two other sets of pickups that we're going to have a look at shortly, and they may end up in this guitar. Eventually I'll do a sound test on all of the different pickups and we can choose the best sounding ones. In any case, the pickup covers are going to end up being aged white the same as the pickguard, so everything's going to be in keeping with a vintage Relic look. You might remember from episode 1 that we looked at the neck, and it's actually amazing on this level of guitar. It's got nice rolled edges, the fretwork looks great, but I'm going to do a full neck setup with full fret leveling and recrowning all of the frets, and we'll do that on this channel. Okay, so if we move up to the headstock, what I'm going to do up here is I'm going to switch the nut out for something like a tusk nut, maybe bone, but I think it's going to be tusk because I happen to have one of those already just waiting around. I'm also going to switch out the tuners, but not because these are bad, just for aesthetic reasons. These are going to be gold coloured, the same as the rest of the hardware on this guitar. The truth is, these tuners aren't actually bad. They've got a high ratio which makes them pretty accurate, and they seem to be really well made. They're die cast as well, which means they're not cheap rubbish. I'll probably end up using them on a different project, but I'm definitely going to have to switch these out for some gold tuners, just so they match the rest of the hardware. In terms of the string trees, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these out for relic roller versions, in gold of course. I'm going to be relicking all the hardware, so I'll show you the best way to do that without it looking cheap and cheesy or too battered. What we're going to be going for on this guitar is a reasonably heavy relic, but I don't want to batter this guitar about. I want to make sure that I treat it with love and respect throughout the whole process, so I still end up with a great performing guitar at the end of it all. Over a few years I've developed a couple of nice processors that take care of the instrument and only add to the patina and make it look really vintage and authentic. In the same way that a lot of people don't like flash sports cars, I'm the same with guitars. I don't like glossy, shiny, high-end looking guitars. I like mine to look like they've got a lot of character. And by the end of this process, I'm hoping this guitar's got just as strong a look as it does the sound. So moving on to the headstock, you guys already know that I love this shape. It's the classic Fender shape. And I think it's just going to look great with the spaghetti logo on there. Some people get upset when you start sticking logos on headstocks that shouldn't be there. But in my opinion, I really love the look of it. It's the same shape as a Fender, it's made of wood, and just because I made it instead of it being made in a factory in Corona, I'm perfectly happy with that. In a way, this guitar will be more personal to me than anything I could buy off the shelf. What I plan to do is to break this project down into some shorter videos, so you can see exactly the processes involved without having to skim over anything. And I think in today's video, we're going to remove the scratch plate and the pickups, remove the bridge, and remove the input jack. And then I'm going to remove the neck as well, and I'll show you exactly what's going on with it before we start relicking the body in a different video. You can go to extremes when you're relicking a guitar, but I think what I'm going to do is somewhere in the middle. So not too heavy, not too light. I want it to look like it's been around the block a few times, but it's still got plenty of playability and plenty of life left in it. So after we've got all this in pieces, I'm going to show you all the new hardware that's arrived. I've been getting really excited about it. I know it's sad, but that's just me. I'll also show you what pickup options we have too. I was toying with the option of putting a hot rail in the bridge position, but I think we'll just stick with something classic. I really have a lot of love for guitars that were made in the 50s and 60s, so I want to stay true to that kind of era. So without any further ado, let's dive in. So first things first, I've removed the backplate to reveal the trem block. I'm going to hardtail this guitar as we talked about in episode 1. You can see this is very white, just like the scratch plate on the front. Rather than buy a new one of these, I'm probably going to try and stain it and make it look aged and relic. So we'll talk about how to do that and we'll show you the entire process later on. I don't really want to throw this in the bin because there's nothing wrong with it, and I know a lot of you guys who are Strat players and Strat fans like to see the guitar with no backplate on. But because I'll be hardtailing this guitar, as we talked about in episode 1, I'll be placing blocks either side made of wood. To stop them coming out and falling out of the guitar, it really helps to have the cavity covered. I'm also going to use upgraded springs, just because I happen to have some really good quality original Fender ones in my kit bag. And I don't see any reason to replace the claw, because usually they're just a piece of metal to ground to, which is screwed into the body of the guitar. So for now I'm just going to snip this wire. I'm not going to desolder it because I only have one joint to undo to get the whole thing out of the guitar. So all I'm going to do is snip that and then I'll resolder it all up properly later on. So to get this tremolo system out in preparation for the body relicking, I'm going to just snip that and unscrew everything. Here we go. And now when we flip the guitar over, that should come out nicely, straight through the body, no problem. The only thing that's keeping it attached to the guitar are the 2 wires connecting it to the input jack, which we'll remove now too. Now I like to do all this stuff by hand. I know a lot of people use power tools, but again, as part of the respect for this instrument, there's no better way of feeling how tight a screw is, whether you're going to shred it, whether you're going to rip the thread off it, than just doing things by hand. So that jack was actually screwed in pretty loosely, so it's going to come out easily by hand with just a little bit of force. I'm probably going to replace this input jack for a Switchcraft as well, but I'm going to check out the quality of this a little bit closer once I've removed it. So I don't see any problem with that boat plate, as they call it. It looks reasonable quality, of course it's chromed, but I'm switching this for gold hardware, so I'll keep that for another project. And to save more time, I'm just going to snip these jack cables too. The quality of the jack doesn't look too bad. Now we can get a better look at the back of the pickguard. It looks pretty dirty, but it'll clean up nicely. All the solder joints look fantastic. I do have some genuine CTS pots that can go in here, as well as an Oak Grigsby selector switch. And of course we'll be replacing the pickups, so we could end up junking all this stuff, maybe keep it for another project. But I'd like to try and keep these pots where possible. There's nothing wrong with them, they sound fantastic. I might use a little bit of cleaner on them just to make sure that there's no crackle, but we'll try and preserve as much of this guitar as possible, and then we can do some comparisons later on. So let's put that to one side for now. And now let's remove the bridge, and then we'll remove the neck. So first you've got to undo the claw screws. This thing is under tension, so you want to just slacken it off so there's hardly any, if any, tension on those springs. Makes life a lot easier that way. A good quality screwdriver is all you need. As long as you've got a good fit, you shouldn't round the threads or round the heads. If you start without an appropriate fit, you can often strip the head, meaning you're going to then have to Dremel a straight line in it, and you can then use a flat head. But that's not the point of this project. I'm not doing this to be as fast as I possibly can. I want to enjoy the process. And there might be a time in the future when I reuse all this stuff for a different guitar. This has got a classic vintage setup, so you'll notice there's as many screws as there are strings, and that's to give it a really good solid anchor to the body of the guitar. That's the true authentic design, and because I'm hardtailing it, I have no problem with these extra screws. All of the string vibration is going to be going through the bridge into the body. The back of the bridge is going to be hardtailed, which has wood blocks sandwiching it into the back of the guitar, effectively making it one solid block. So all of the vibration from the strings as you play goes into the bridge and then into the body, giving you the overall resonance of the body itself and the kind of wood that it's made from. I haven't decided yet whether to replace this for a gold version. I don't mind the mix match look, so it's kind of got that Fender Pawn Shop series vibe going on. It might look pretty cool when this is all aged and relicked, and then in stark contrast to the rest of the gold. It might look a bit kind of vintage and quirky. If it doesn't, I can always switch this out for something that's a bit more in keeping. So we want to strip the body completely of all the metal parts because I want to have a nice clean slate to go out when it comes to sanding the body. Part of the relicking process is getting rid of this very, very shiny polyester that's on top of this guitar paint. I'm going to do all the sanding by hand. I'm not going to use an orbital sander or any mechanical devices whatsoever. I'm just going to use various sanding blocks. I'll talk all about that in a different episode, and we're going to get this back to a nice flattered finish. Already waiting in the wings is a gold neck plate, and I don't think we're going to keep this plastic collar on because that's not true to tradition either. As long as the screws grip in there nice and tight, that's all we need. What I'm doing is I'm loosening the tension on each one of them individually, just to try and distribute or unload the weight evenly. Just holding the neck to the body is enough pressure just to keep it in place while you make the last few turns of these screws. So there we go. Very nice clean heel joint. I'll measure this up just so I know what's going on with this. What I plan to do is sand all this neck down so it's got a really soft feel to it. This is not bad, it's satin, it's not sticky and glossy like a lot of Fender guitars, but I'm still going to sand this down to the bare wood, maybe put a little bit of wax onto it just to maybe give it a slight tint, but just enough to make it feel a little bit smoother than it does. But that's not bad at all, so I'm pretty happy with that. What's interesting is you can see that somebody's put a shim there to give the neck a slight downwards angle. So I will remove this, but I'm going to make sure that I put that back in. It might be that we don't need it, but if somebody's put it there, it usually means that it's been set up. And I've got to say, when I played it when it first arrived, the guitar played like a dream, so I'm going to try and replicate that. I'm not going to mess with that too much. So I'm going to keep this little tiny shim and make sure it goes back in the same place. To do that, I'm going to just use a pencil to draw around the outline of that shim so I know exactly where it goes. I'm not going to spray any colour or do anything to the inside of this neck pocket, so that should go exactly in the same place when it goes back in. So there we have our body, all ready for the next stage in our process. So the last step for today is to remove these tuners. And I'm going to switch them out for gold small head tulip tuners, which are going to be a bit more in keeping with the vintage style of this guitar. So first of all, we're going to have to undo the front bolts, and then we'll undo these rear bolts, and hopefully the new one should fit straight in. A few final things to show you guys before we get going. This is the gold hardware and a couple of pickup options that we have. So of course, we have gold locking tuners, we have the gold neck plate and screws. I'll be relicing this completely, as well as the head of all of the screws that we put on the guitar. Here are the pickguard screws, again gold, and each head will also be relicing, but not the threads and not the springs obviously. There's a combination of pickguard screws, of which there are 11, and pickup height screws as well. Every single head of every single screw we're going to relic. So here are the nice new tuners. Lovely gold, you see what I mean about the size of the head. Again, we'll be relicing all of the external parts of these tuners. If we stick with the original pickups, I've got aged white pickup covers. I've measured the pole pieces on the original pickups and they marry perfectly with these. The measurements are 48, 50 and 52 in the bridge. If we don't use those, we've got some other pickup options. One of the pickup replacement options we have are these weird and wonderful things, which are not ceramic backed. I'm led to believe these might be vintage humbuckers, or humbucker style, with the actual magnets mounted in here to be high stacked humbuckers. Hopefully we'll be able to find out if the tone's any good from them. So that's one option, again, aged white, not cream. And the other option we have are these Alnico 5 aged white single coil pickups. These are hand wound in the UK. These are made by Allegory. So if you don't know anything about Allegory, look them up. These will be every bit as good as vintage Fenders or the modern Pro Series Fender pickups. These are the hot favourites to go in. These are nice low output, about 5.8, and they should give a really, really lovely, clean, clear sound. Of course, on the scratch plate, we're going to need aged white knobs. And finally, for now, we have the gold boat jack plate. Again, we'll be relicing that. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a bit of a deconstruction, really. The beginning of the process basically revolves around taking everything to pieces. We've got to have it that way because we're going to do some really heavy work to this body and the neck. And hopefully by the end of this project, this is going to be one wonderful guitar, heavily customised, and hopefully it's going to play as good as it looks. So as ever, guys, thanks for watching. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please like and leave comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell sign and you'll get notifications every time I upload a video, which means you won't miss any of these episodes in this series. So until next time, keep on playing.